I almost think of it like a doctor. Nick needs heart surgery, and you go meet with a doctor that's brand new. He's a fiduciary. He has to act in Nick's best interest, but he's done one heart surgery. And the guy down the hall has done 5,000.
Yeah. Do I want that guy doing it, or do I want the lady down the hall who's done 5,000?
First of all, meet with an advisor that knows what they're talking about and a good CPA. Yes. Recently, you've changed firms. Obviously, you've joined us. So you transitioned all your clients. You and your staff had to literally talk to every client that you've worked with in the last 10 years.
Welcome to Dear Rochester. Retire well. Dive in, be curious, become prosperous. David Pulsini, CFP, his team, and his guests will help you figure out your 6 points and give you the ultimate roadmap to financial freedom and what to do from there. Now, let's get started.
All right, welcome back, folks. We are here with Nick Savas. Nick recently joined our firm. I've known Nick for a number of years, and I wanted to get him on today to talk about some things with clients, things that have popped up when Nick joined us through his changing of businesses and talking with his clients. Some interesting questions popped up that we'll get into. Nick, thanks for being here today, man. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing really well. Excited to be here.
All right. So, Nick, what's a fiduciary? Let me jump right into it. What is a fiduciary? Everybody's asking me that right now. I don't know why.
I'm getting asked a lot of questions on that too. That's a great question. I think the by the book definition is you're legally required to act in the client's best interest, right? So, if the average person were to look that up or ask somebody, that's the answer they're going to get. Where I think it goes a little bit deeper is, well, how do you know if an advisor is actually acting in your best interest? I think it's one thing to actually say that, but then there could be a number of other factors at play that a client may or may not be aware of that absolutely impact whether an advisor is a fiduciary or not.
Nick, have you ever heard an advisor say, "No, I'm not a fiduciary"? Like, does that exist? I don't even know if that exists. I've been around for a while, and I talk to a lot of advisors. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, "No, I'm not a fiduciary." So
I've never heard it either.
Yeah. So my thing is, what if you're an advisor, you just don't know? If you're supposed to act in the best interest of a client.
Yep.
And I'll pick on myself, Nick, so I'm not picking on anybody else, but you take the 24-year-old Dave as a new advisor and someone walks in with a complex estate issue. I mean, how would I even handle it? I couldn't be a fiduciary because I don't know. Right. So I almost think of it like a doctor. Nick, if you need, and I hope you don't, Nick needs heart surgery, and you go meet with a doctor that's brand new. He's a fiduciary. He has to act in Nick's best interest, but he's done one heart surgery, and the guy down the hall has done 5,000.
Yeah. Do I want that guy doing it, or do I want the lady down the hall who's done 5,000? Right.
Exactly. So how do you? If you're a listener or a client, and you're asking people if they're a fiduciary, they're going to find a way to say yes. They're not going to say no. What's the follow-up question that you would ask?
I would start by asking, well, what's your experience? What types of people do you work with? And I would then ask them about some of the credentials they might have. That's probably the follow-up questions that I would start to go down if I was talking to an advisor about, fiduciary.
Is some of it a gut feeling?
I think so. I mean, this business, when you're working with someone, is really built on trust at the end of the day. So, we all get those gut feelings of, I get a good feeling about this person, or just something is just not right. So I think that's very valid too. I mean, you could pick up a lot of, as far as body language, how people are handling certain questions, whether, answering the fiduciary question or the follow-up question, maybe that makes them a little uncomfortable. Those are the things you will get a feel for that. And I think everyone would know what I'm talking about there.
All right. Let me ask you one more thing about this and we'll move on. If Nick suddenly had $4 million and was not a financial advisor, what type of firm would you go to, or what questions would you Just the fiduciary stuff, not the other. We all could give lists of 100 questions you should ask an advisor, but what type of firm would you look for, and what type of firm would you not look for? Or would you say there's just no chance I'm going to that place because I know something?
I think the type I would want to be at a firm that is independent. It has no affiliation with certain product companies or a company that might be incentivized to do certain things. And again, we can potentially talk a little bit about how to maybe spot that. But I would start to look for that, right? Someone who's as unbiased as they can possibly get. And then certainly you'd want to look for someone who has experience dealing with situations with clients where that has happened to, or they have someone on their team who's an expert in that area that they'd be able to potentially bring in. I mean, so those would be the main things that I'd be looking for. You don't want to go to, your neighbor who's a financial advisor, but they've only been doing it a couple of years, or, they just handle, certain things about investments, right? But haven't really ever dealt with that type of situation, which could be extremely complex.
Yeah. So, all right. I told you that was the last question, but I have one more for you, just because I just recently got this.
Yeah.
Nick, I set my stuff up with an advisor, and this is the other end of the $4 million issue, but I set my stuff up with an advisor, and then I never heard from them again, or they left. What do I do now? How do you answer that?
Well, that's unfortunate that happened. I would start with if someone set that up with you and then you haven't heard from them again, that is a huge red flag.
Mm-hmm.
I would start to look around to talk to trusted resources, people in your community and your family who, hey, do you know someone who could potentially be able to help? I would start by interviewing some different advisors to get an idea of, hey, how does your process potentially, is this normal? Is this the way I should be treated? Or is this the normal process of working with an advisor? That's probably, I would just start to explore, do a little bit of your own research. It's an unfortunate situation. There should be a lot of things going on differently there, but I think if you're the individual that's happening to, starting to be proactive and do some additional things is going to be the best thing you could do at that point.
All right. So what I got out of that is, are you independent? Are you a fiduciary?
Yep.
And then separately, if I'm that person, what does your communication plan look like for your clients? Right? Do you actually have a plan to reach out to me? When are we reviewing on a consistent basis? When are you proactively going to reach out to me? Those are questions I would be asking. But again, that's not why we're here, Nick. That's part of it. Now that everybody knows you a little bit, give me a brief background. We'll save the long bio for another day, but how'd you get into financial planning and where you are now?
Yeah, great question. I got into financial planning right out of college. So I did it was something I got more interested in as I became a junior and then a senior. So I actually did an internship working alongside an advisor, which was a great experience. Got to actually sit in on some client meetings, understand what's going on behind the scenes. As I started to learn more about it, I was, this was definitely the career path I wanted to go down. Just the opportunity to work with people and help them, in an area that's so important as finances are. So I got started right out of school, got all my, initial credentialing done. And that was over 10 years ago. So I've now been doing this for over a decade. And it's been amazing. It's such an awesome career, one where you get to, work with people and you get to see all sorts of different situations and truly help them at the end of the day.
Yeah. And, it's a lot of entrepreneurship involved in our business that I think some
Very
folks
much.
don't get, but it is a little bonus there. So recently you've changed firms. Obviously you've joined us, and this is kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And that was the longest intro ever, Nick, to what I really wanted to get to was, so you transitioned all your clients. You went through, you and your staff had to literally talk to every client that you've worked with in the last 10 years. And you have to have them work with you at the new place, because when an advisor makes those changes, folks have to sign documents to move over to the new firm. So Nick and the staff, you had to reach out, talk with those people, get them to sign new documents to move the accounts over. when you were doing that, you ran into some interesting questions, and like, let's pick. I mean, I know you had a lot because we talked about this, but like pick two. Let's pick one right now. I'm going to ask you one more after, but like, what are two things people are asking you right now? Because your change to our firm was very recent. So what are people asking right now?
Yeah, I mean, we're in May, so it was about 3 months ago, almost to a T. So, beyond the initial, like, hey, are my accounts okay? Hey, what's our, are we all set moving forward? Beyond all that stuff, over the last 3 months, we were right in the middle of tax season. So I got a ton of questions about taxes. And I think the second component is going to factor into this a little bit, but I got a lot of people who, I actually owed taxes this year. This hasn't happened before, or it's a lot more than it normally does. What do we do about that? So it was really timely to be able to talk with people during that, during this phase where we can actually go a few layers deeper to say, why did this happen? How could we potentially start to change this and put you in a better situation, obviously, to try and reduce the amount of tax liability and what we can do now and into the future. So taxes were huge as far as the conversations. And we had some people too, where we found certain things in their financial situation that either we just didn't know about. A lot of them actually happened recently, right? So maybe within the last year or so, in between our review cycles, we had some people who inherited large sums of money. They're not sure what to do with it. So, those were a lot. That actually came up a couple times.
We'll be back after this short message.
Hi, this is Dave Pulsini. Sometimes we are asked, what does 6-point mean? And I wanted to explain that right now. 6 points are the 6 points of financial planning. We have investment planning, retirement income, risk management, tax planning, estate planning, and then custom goal planning. Those 6 points include over 120 things that we actually do for folks. So if you are not confident in your 6 points, reach out to us. Back to the show. Okay, let's back up to the tax thing.
Yeah.
So something, and obviously you know this, something that I don't want to say couldn't do before, because I'm actually not even sure that's true. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but at most firms, if you're not independent, you're not really encouraged to do detailed tax planning. So part of the process now is when folks ask us about their taxes and helping them save tax dollars today, as well as helping them plan for taxes. That's different from preparation, right? Tax prep is I bring my packet to my CPA or my tax preparer. They fill some stuff out and then tell me if I owe or get a refund. Tax planning is what can I adjust to lower my tax bill now and in the future. So one thing that we could do as an action item for a lot of folks is during tax season is collect the 1040s, or I should say after they file their taxes, collect 1040s, plug it into software that we use. It gives us actionable items for taxes for the next year. So I know you were doing that. So that's part of the action item for the first one. When folks are asking like, hey, how can I save money on taxes? Well, there you go. Nick, you and your team did that for those folks. The inheritance thing is separate. And let me give you a real example. And this is for the listeners and this is going to happen more and more. I just did a video on the great wealth transfer and baby boomer millionaires.
Yes.
So there's $72 trillion in motion in the next 25 years.
Insane to think about that.
That is crazy. And when we say trillion, Nick, I can't even, I get what it is, but like that is a number that most folks can't even imagine. And in the video, I said 1 billion, which is a huge number, right? 1 billion, if you did it in seconds, is 31.7 years. So 1 second, 2, 3, it's 31.7 years to count to a billion. A trillion is 31,700 years. So like a billion to a trillion, that is crazy. Yeah. And there's 72 of those transferring to folks that are younger. We work with a lot of them. And through you making a move, some of those folks are expecting inheritances, or you ran into people that are just received an inheritance, or they don't know what to do with it. So I want to give you a real example here of, this is a client of mine, Nick. So give them advice right now. You ready?
I'm ready.
Third party CFP, Nick Savas. Free advice for my clients. I like this.
Fiduciary advice.
Yeah. So I have a couple, husband and wife. They're 52 years old. they make a good living. They're making around $300,000 a year. And I know you can't do detailed tax planning on the fly without looking at this, but
no, I know.
they're inheriting about a $900,000 IRA from her mom. This is real. It's going into her name right now, and she has to take it. Well, I'll let you explain it. What does she have to do, Nick, with that IRA?
Yeah, so they passed a law a few years ago, which changed the way that these types of inheritances work. And in this situation, it is directly impacted by that. So anytime a non-spouse inherits money, in this situation, the general rule is they will have to distribute every dollar out of that IRA within 10 years of them inheriting it. The old rule used to be, because that IRA would have required distributions based on the mom's age at some point in the future. It used to be where you can inherit that and effectively stretch that out for the person who inherited its lifetime. So it turned into, well, we got to take a little bit out each year. It's not that big of a deal. Now we got to basically take the whole thing out within 10 years. And the big issue is, since it's an IRA, traditional IRA, all that money is taxable as it comes out. And those clients are probably demographically, and I would think a lot of people who might be in a similar situation, those are prime earning years for a lot of people, right? You've ascended your way up your career, and you're close to retirement, but not quite there yet. Those are where probably most people are making the most amount of money that they will during the course of their life as far as income goes. So if you're forced now to actually take money out, that's going to get added. I mean, that could easily start to be a tax issue right away.
Yeah. So part of what we would, we tell the listeners this is, if this is an issue, first of all, meet with an advisor that knows what they're talking about and a good CPA. Yes. But second, if we have 10 years, we have all 10 years, right, Nick? So we could wait till 9 years and 360 days.
That's the key thing, is you don't have to take out, you're not required to take it out each year, but the whole thing's got to be distributed by the 10th year. So this is where some of the strategy can come in.
Yeah. So if they know they're retiring at 57, right? Yep. Their income might be lower. So does it make sense to wait to take any of it till after that? The other thing we don't know, and nobody knows this, is where tax brackets are going to go. Right. Correct. So if they're in a 20 or what would it be, 24% bracket right now,
probably, yeah.
And that 24% bracket, no fault of their own, turns into a 35% tax bracket, a 10% ish increase on 900,000. They just lost 90,000 by a tax law change if not planned for properly. So
that's huge.
I mean, it's $90,000 and a good advisor can save them. That's crazy.
Right.
And this is going to keep happening because of this great wealth transfer and the baby boomer millionaires.
We'll be back after this short message.
Do you know how much money you need to retire with confidence? Do you know how long your money will last? Are you missing something? Retirement planning is like a puzzle, and we want to make sure that not only do we have all of the pieces, but that the pieces are in the right place. To find out where you stand, go to SixPointFP.com and take our How Much Do You Need to Retire 5-question quiz. We will email you a free video response to let you know what we think. Now, back to the show.
So you had questions on the taxes, which we covered.
Yes.
You had questions on the inheritance part of it because you had other folks with other assets. I've got one more for you, and in no way did I prepare you for this. So I want to see what you say. Is another thing that we keep running into, and the listeners know this. I've done so many things on this. Nick, I have too much money sitting in the bank.
Oh yeah,
earning 1%, 2%.
Yeah,
happens all the time, and it's such an easy thing. Most folks are now going and saying, okay, I can get a 5% in a CD. Why don't I just throw it in there for 6 or 7 months?
Yep.
What? I have 300,000 in the bank. I'm 45 years old. I want to keep it cash or liquid on hand. What do you do with it? And I know there's so many more questions to ask, but
I think I think my first follow-up question would be, well, what do you want the money to be used for, and by when? And the client might not even truly know that or have never thought about that, but I think that the answer to that question is a really good starting point to say, do we go down this path, or this path? There's a lot of investment accounts out there that people can use. I think when people think about investments, and they think a lot about their retirement accounts, right? Their 401k, their IRA, but you can invest money outside of those types of accounts, and you can do so with a lot more flexibility. With that 401ks and the IRAs of the world, you got to, and again, we know there's exceptions to this, right? But you, in general, have to keep the money in there until you reach age 59 and a half, et cetera. But what if you want to use it or retire before then? What if you want to do something like, buy a piece of property? You want to buy that vacation home you've always wanted, right? So you want to do these things, but you don't want to. You want to avoid having to pay extra taxes, early withdrawal penalties, maybe even potentially having a loan, out of, which might not be the best way to actually get access to the money. So you can create an investment portfolio that is extremely accessible, that does not have any sort of strings attached. There's a lot of different names. We might be talking about a brokerage account, non-retirement account. There's a lot of different names that people call it. But when you're in a bracket, when you're in an account like that, just going back to the taxes, most people are probably going to pay capital gains rates on those, which in your example with those clients, the capital gains rate for most people probably going to be 15%. It could be a little bit higher, up to 20, for higher income earners. But even in both those scenarios, it's going to be lower than the 24% marginal rate or the 32 if they, keep making more. So there's a lot of opportunities potentially, even in that scenario alone, to grow their money in the market over time, which even at the 5% CD rates, which are amazing today, especially compared to where they were, just a few years ago, where you can get stock market like returns and still have access to the money at all times and still get some tax advantages. And there's even ways to potentially reduce that even more based on someone's situation.
I love it. So the first thing I think of is, Nick, the answer on why people have money sitting in the bank like that, typically, unless it's for a very specific purpose, I want to buy a boat, I want to buy a house in 2 years. Typically, the answer that I get is, it just makes me feel good. I just want that security. It's in my bank. I know I can go grab it. That's totally fine. What I would say is pick the number that you are comfortable with. And it's like 100,000, 200,000. It's never like 112,000, $412 makes me happy, right? It's like 100,000, 200,000, 250. It's the FDIC insurance. That's another issue, by the way. But the second part, when we find real wealth, it is in those after-tax accounts. And I'll tell you why. And you know this, Nick. How much money does Elon Musk have in a 401k? I get people saying, wow, Elon Musk's 401k must be crazy. Guess what? He has the same limit as everybody else. So exactly. Elon Musk probably doesn't have much more money than some of your friends inside of a 401k. Now, his money is in stocks and other ownership of company and other things. But when we find true wealth, it is in those after-tax portfolios, because there is no limit and we can contribute on a monthly basis. And I say this to a lot of people, that's where we want money to be. We can control it. It's tied to a bank account. We can liquidate it and put it back in your bank account within 3 or 4 days, typically. You can take losses on your taxes for up to $3,000, and we can carry forward some things. We can play some legal loophole games with our taxes with after-tax accounts, and you can contribute as much as you want. So really high income earners, I believe the cap right now, 20%. To get to the 20% capital gains rate, you need to be making more than $563,000 or something like that. So the folks over that, then you're in a different tax issue altogether. But that's a huge, huge range. You guys probably can afford to save $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000. We have folks saving $50,000 to $100,000 a month in those accounts, way over a 401k limit, right?
Yeah, when you think about the 401k limit of this year, it's 23,000. Oh, if you're over 50, you can get up to 30,500. It's like, I mean, that's a great contribution. We have a lot of people who are easily maxing those out, but just even the example you gave, like, you can contribute so much more to that type of account. Yeah.
23,500 and 30,000. I don't want you to get sued, Nick. You transposed the number there. We're live, folks. Look at it.
You got me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got you now. Yeah. Yeah. Insurance will cover you. Don't worry. But yeah, hey, listen, folks, I wanted you to meet Nick. Nick is very knowledgeable in our business. I wanted to get him on this podcast. He works in our office. Quick intro to Nick. Reach out to us with any questions. And for now, Nick, anything else? I'm about to say, make it a great day. You good?
I'm good, man. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and share with people a little bit about what I'm doing. And I'm super happy to be part of the firm with you guys. It's been great.
Folks, make it a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Dear Rochester Retire Well podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of SixPoint Financial Partners. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.